Yes. Dr. Mindy in the house. All right.
I appreciate that.
The carnivore diet.
Because of what we eat.
Honestly, you've really touched my heart.
So Fast Like a Girl, it's ready for pre-order now. I hope this book changes your life the way the information has changed hundreds of thousands of women that have applied it. From the bottom of my heart, enjoy and let's get healthy together.
Let's start off with this. You're a model, which has to be one of the most, I would think, one of the most stressful environments to work in. I would think.
That's so funny. I don't hear that from a lot of people. Really? Usually I hear the glamour and I hear, oh, it must be so nice and so easy. And I had the opposite experience. So I appreciate your view on that.
I grew up in LA and I'm like, I'm living in Northern California now, but I understand that superficial, everything is on the outside. Look, you're great if you look good or you drive a certain car. And that is a stressful way to live. So
yeah, well, I certainly didn't grow up like that. I grew up in Northwest Canada. And so there was I didn't know anything of modeling. I mean, the only thing that I knew is we had like the Sears catalog that came probably annually or maybe biannually. And that's kind of what I knew of that world, but I knew nothing of that world at all. I had no sense of like self looks or really anything like that. Certainly not in an LA sense. We didn't watch a lot of TV. And so I didn't grow up really in that world at all. I was a member of our church and I was in youth group and I sang in the choir and I was in drama and all that stuff. And ironically, my agent found me in church. He found me. Wow. I was singing a solo. And he, quote unquote, discovered me. And asked my mom, because I had just turned 16. So kind of approached us afterwards and asked my mom if she would consider allowing me to model. And she said, absolutely not. That is the devil's playground. And, she was a widow. My father died when I was 11. So she was very protective over her 4 kids, as you should be as a mom.
Yep.
And I was lucky enough to have her wisdom and have her not be like, oh, absolutely, go and make money. She was very, very wise and did everything prayerfully. And so we just kind of looked at it over the course of a couple months and kind of took, smaller steps into the introduction of modeling. And our agent was incredible. He was really, they call him even now like a mother agent, where they really kind of take care of the person.
Yeah.
And modeling back then was way different than it is now too. I mean, we're talking
in
like,
what way?
Well, there wasn't cell phones. There wasn't email.
Oh yeah.
I'm fully aging myself.
Yeah,
but there was no email. There was no technology. Mm-hmm. So, I actually got on an airplane on my 18th birthday to fly to Germany. And it was a Friday night and the agency wasn't open Saturday or Sunday. And so my mom didn't know that I was okay until I went to the agency on Monday morning and faxed her. I didn't even call her. I faxed her. So modeling is very different now, where basically anyone and everyone can be a model, which I love because I think it's an amazing opportunity. I think that it filters out, what used to be, you had to be a certain size 25 years ago when I started modeling. You had to have a certain look. And now it's just like wide open. Anyone can be anything. And I love that so much. But to your original question, no, it wasn't glamorous for me at all. It was very, very, very difficult mentally.
In what way?
Mentally and physically, because I was always just a certain size. My parents were both over 6 feet. And slimmer builds. And so I had never worried about what I should eat or what I shouldn't eat. I didn't have the pressure of being thin. And the reason why you had to be a certain size 25 years ago is because there was sample size clothing. So there was, when you would shoot for a catalog, which I did a lot of runway catalog editorials, they would only have a certain amount of clothes because then they would produce them, but they wanted to shoot them before so that you could promote before the magazine comes out, right? Okay. So they only have a certain amount of sizes where they would only make one size, a sample size, and you would have to fit into that sample size. And the only time I struggled with my weight was when I started modeling. And I don't know what it was. I think it's because of the pressure, because of the comparison, because I was alone at 18. I was alone in Europe, with no cell phone, again, it was pre all of this FaceTime, pre all of this stuff. And I was just kind of figuring it out. And so, I would sit alone at night in my little tiny apartment in Hamburg, Germany, and I would eat Nutella by the jarful. Because I actually didn't know, I didn't think that I would gain weight. Like it was just, and I was eating all the bread and all the pasta and all
my God.
I went in September, so I went over the coldest months. So of course I was just comfort eating, but it wasn't like an emotional eating thing for me. It was just what I was doing. And I ended up gaining 30 pounds in 3 months.
How did that work for your agent?
Not very well.
So what do they do? Do they come in and they're like, got to shut that eating down? Yeah, you really, because you stop booking jobs because you're not the sample size and you're not the sample weight. And that it's true. The camera does add weight as well. So again, back then it just wasn't as acceptable as it is now to be any and every size. It was more of, thinner was better. Back then. So what'd you do to lose weight then? Is that where, do you stop eating?
Honestly, yeah, it was it's where my unhealthy relationship came to food. Because this was before I had all the tools that I have now. And so back then, at 18, all I really knew was, okay, I'm just going to stop eating. I'm just going to starve myself. And I wasn't anorexic. I wasn't, I don't want to lessen the very serious disorders, but I certainly had, an emotional eating disorder of my own where it was just before I didn't have a conscious what I was putting into my mouth. I just ate whatever as a kid, and at home I would eat pizza, I would eat whatever. And starting from that point, I then thought about what I was putting into my mouth. And it carried over for the next decade of, should I eat this? And then there was a guilt attached to it. And then there was I need to work out after it. But it wasn't a healthy, mindful eating. It was just a guilt eating.
Right.
So I would I would binge eat, and then I just wouldn't eat for the next 24 hours. Or I would only eat candy. I would only eat candy because I felt like, oh, maybe it's not as fattening as bread, or just a completely different, zero knowledge education around food. I just did it what I thought was the easy way.
Yeah. Do you feel like you have that now, or did you undo that?
I completely undid that. Yeah, completely undid that. With having babies, I think that was a big thing. For sure. And also just education. I went through a major depression period. I did when I was young also after my father died. But then I went through another really big season of depression after I got a divorce, and hitting rock bottom. The way that I was able to climb out of that hole was through education, and through educating myself, experiencing it, educating myself again, experiencing it. And then what probably was the biggest change for a relationship with food for me was starting to work out and becoming an athlete. So I became an athlete in my 30s, which is pretty late, especially for triathlon. I became a triathlete, but I started training for triathlon because I couldn't afford therapy anymore.
Oh my gosh.
So it was
that's a strange, if you didn't know the human body, that would be like a strange lateral change, but a good one.
I know. It's so funny when I compartmentalize and kind of tell my story. It's like I'm telling someone else's story. Cause when you've lived as long as, I don't know how old you are, but you seem like you're kind of my age where.
Well, thank you. How old are you? You're 40?
I'm 43. Yeah. 42.
I'm 51.
Okay. So a decade older.
But I'll be 43 for today. I'll take it.
But you never know. I was just talking with Elle the other day too. We both have 18-year-olds. You have an 18-year-old.
20 and an 18-year-old. I do as well.
Okay. Yeah. So you never know if you're 40s or 50s or whatever.
all the same. After 40, it's just like, it's all the same, right? It's just like, I'm over 40. That's all you need to know.
I'm over 40 and that's all you need to know, because the rest is just, it's bliss. Like I love being 40 and over, because I just feel like the wisdom along with the experience and just the confidence is incredible in women over 40, in my opinion.
You know what happened to me when I turned 40? There was like a switch in my head that was like, you're 40 now, so you should not care what other people think of you. Like it was like literally like I don't know what it was about 40, but it was like you need to give up worrying about what other people think of you. Yeah. And it was on a physical level for sure, but then as my 40s went on, it morphed into more of just a more authentic version of me, because you start to get to know yourself.
And how old were your kids at that point? Did that have something to do with your children's age as well?
Well, maybe. I mean, my daughter is 20 now, and I'll tell you, and you know, as a mom, you probably had this experience where she was very artistic and flamboyant, and so when we were like definitely the family that like let our kids express themselves however they wanted. And so for her, that meant that when Halloween was over and she was Ariel, she still was Ariel, and she would still want to wear the long red wig wherever we went. So and we would be at the grocery store in the car arguing over why you couldn't wear your ratted up red Ariel wig into the store. Totally. And after a while, I'm like, what am I doing? Just let her wear it.
Yeah, who cares?
And so we would go into the store, and it really, I realized it was my issue. It's now December and we're wearing Ariel wigs into the store, and she doesn't care. So I got to give up caring.
Yeah, no, it's a similar experience I had too with having kids. They're so innocent and they're so childlike, and they don't really care what anyone thinks of them. You know, at that certain age, we're the ones that impress that on them. We're the ones that are like, no, you can't do that. You can't wear a blue sock and a red sock. And they're like, why? It's colorful. I love it.
Yep.
So I had a similar experience for sure of just being like, wait, why am I caring? Like, what? It's a negative impact on my life, and it's an energy suck. And I'm just, I feel so much more joyful. Yes. When I can wear a red sock and a blue sock.
Yes. They don't have to always match.
Live life. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. No, your kids are so good. And they also, as you know, with an 18-year-old, you hit a point now where I watch them and I'm like, oh, I implanted that in you. I'm so sorry. Like, and then I have to kind of unpack it a little bit. Like, you know, I get that you're feeling this way, and I'll take ownership over it sometimes. Like, you know, I ask you to redefine it because it might have been my limiting belief that I put in there. So let's look at this from a different angle.
Yeah. So yeah, I feel the same way. And it's a relationship too that I had with my mother as well before she passed away, was knowing what was her issue. That maybe she didn't have the same communication tools as we do now. And she wasn't able to admit that, but before she died, I was able to say, okay, that is your issue. And that's okay, because you don't have the tools of forgiveness, or you don't have the tools of letting go of that, but I don't need to own that anymore.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I think, going up or going down.
Did you verbalize that to her?
I did. Yeah.
How'd she take it?
She was incredible. Yeah. I give her huge props for learning right up until she died. She died when she was 65. And she kept on learning and kept on changing and kept on reinventing herself, which I think is incredible for that generation, that post-war kind of generation, because they certainly had no tools, you know?
Right.
But yeah, I'm very grateful for that, because I didn't speak to her during 3 years after my divorce, because she didn't agree with it. And I just had to do what I had to do. And probably more painful even than going through my divorce was feeling like I was going through a divorce with my mother as well, which was kind of double as painful. Yeah. 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 But we were able to reconcile, and before she died, and I'm so grateful for that.
Yeah. What brought you, what was the moment that allowed that to happen, for the reconciliation? Like, how is it just take one person coming back into the relationship and saying, hey, let's do this differently?
Honestly, it was time. It was time where you have to be okay with being in different seasons. I had to be okay with that, because over the course of 3 years, I grew immensely, and so did she. And it's interesting because we ended up writing each other letters that I still have letters that I haven't opened up from her.
What?
Which is really interesting, because she's been gone now for 4 years. And honestly, I just talked about it the other day because we were going through files, and I said to my husband, I was like, I don't know if I want to open these up, because she was in a place then that she isn't now, and certainly not now that she's gone. But I don't want to open that up and open up something that she wrote when she was in a season of hurt and disappointment, and someplace that she wasn't before after we reconciled. But I was in therapy. So I was able to, write emails and write letters to her. And then I think it was just time. And I think at some point in life, I realize that you can either have a relationship or you're not, and then you're going to have regrets. So you either, it's a give and take of what you can handle and what you can't. Yeah. And because my father already died, I really wanted to have a relationship with my mom. But we weren't able to at the time of my separation and my divorce. So she went through 3 years of healing and growing and, talking to different people. And I did too. And I think after those years, we came back together as different people. We weren't the same people that we were 3 years prior. So I think both of us had gained tools of communication and gained tools of what we can handle and what we can't. And then we found a grounds of where we can have a relationship. And it wasn't a perfect relationship. I don't think that exists. No. But it was a relationship of mutual respect and unconditional love.
Yeah. Wow.
And I think that's possible in most relationships that you choose.
Yeah. When I was in my 20s, I was living in LA, and I got the opportunity to hear Ram Dass speak. And do you know who Ram Dass is? Mm-hmm. Yeah. And he said something at the lecture that you get to either decide if you want to be right in a relationship or do you want to be happy, because sometimes those two don't exist. And I think it's really powerful when there's so much animosity in relationships, especially family ones, and you can come back.
Especially family, yeah.
Yeah, and especially your mother, like that's intense. That's an intense one.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, I want to go back to this because you said something, and this is where I'm always, when I'm chatting with people, I'm always thinking about it through the lens of my resetters, because we watch as they come to fasting and diet changes, and like really what these people are doing is making a decision that they don't want to be in the traditional sick care system, that they're going to take health into their own hands. And I have so much admiration for that. Yet there's a mindset that needs to come with it, because in a more sick care system, we're not in control. We just do what we're told. And if it doesn't work, we blame the doctor, we blame the pill, and we go find another pill or another doctor. But what you said a few minutes ago really caught my attention, which was you had depression and then you had a tool to fix it. And then you got depression. This is the way I read it. Then you have depression, then you have a tool to fix it. But it's those painful moments, we have to have them to create the new tools. Do you think that's an accurate statement?
Oh, 100%. Yeah, I love that. I think that pain has been my greatest teacher in life, for sure, because discomfort made me move. The more comfortable I was, the more I just sat back and stayed in my comfort. And the more discomfort I had, and certainly the more desperate I got, the more desperate I got to change and to find something that worked. And what worked at the time then evolved to when it didn't work anymore, but at least it was a stepping stone to then getting more curious of maybe knowing better and then doing better, if that makes sense.
So if you get a painful moment now, do you go, oh, this is awesome, I'm going to learn so much from it? No.
I wish. Yeah.
So what do you do?
No,
Because in the pain, I'm the same way. Like in the pain, I'm like, I don't like this. I don't want this. Let's make this go away. And then it's only when you go back that you see the wisdom of it.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's so funny. Because what I came to this podcast from, I just got off a Zoom call literally 3 minutes before we started this, bawling hysterically because I was on a Zoom call with my 17-year-old's teachers. And, anyone who has teenagers now knows the Zoom calls and knows the mental health of our children and knows just the amount of change that they've had to go through. And so I was just bawling. I was a total mess, and just the heartache and the pain of the lack of control and not knowing what's happening and not knowing what the future is, and just the discomfort, I'm certainly not sitting here going, yes, this is amazing. I'm going to be the greatest, most wise person. No, it hurts and it sucks.
Yeah.
But what I do mentally, even though I'm crying and it hurts and it's a painful situation, you can choose your thoughts. I'll speak for myself. I can now choose my thoughts because, I've learned that my brain and my body are different, even though everything's connected. But if I'm feeling something, I can think something else, and I can think that it's either a positive or a negative. And I spent my entire at young adulthood going up into 30s as a victim. And as a victim, I chose the negative, and I chose my thoughts of what I was thinking about myself, or the narrative of the story. So now I've learned that doesn't help me at all. And even if I have to fake it and fake the positive thought, and not even positive, because I feel like positive is so fluffy, not that it's positive, but a positive thought of knowing I'm not stuck here, and this pain isn't going to be forever. I'm feeling this pain, and I'm crying, and I'm angry, and I'm feeling out of control. But this isn't going to be forever. And I'm allowing that pain to flow through me instead of getting stuck. So what I did in those 3 minutes between our phone calls was I went outside. I'm lucky enough that my husband's with my younger two right now. They're napping. I have a 2 and a 3-year-old as well. But I was able to get up, go outside, literally shake it off, do like a crazy dance, do this incredible breathing where I'm just bringing oxygen to my brain, and I'm moving my body, and I'm moving my brain, and I'm, or not my brain, but I'm moving my breath.
Right.
And it changes your state. And sometimes you have to compartmentalize. I mean, honestly, I would have loved to have canceled this phone call, because I would have loved to have just like been in that, and I can't do it. But I was like, no, I'm going to compartmentalize. Even if I, stumble through my words and I'm in a bit of a fog and not able to answer your questions perfectly. But I've also given up on.
Yeah, I was going to say, don't worry, you're doing great.
I mean,
don't worry.
I just changed my state. And that was a huge, huge, huge tool that I gained from the, how do I say this without, I always think, how do I say this without pissing anybody off? But I'm just going to say
go for it. Just say it.
Pharmaceuticals didn't work for me. So I went on I was prescribed 3 different pharmaceuticals for depression, and each one of them threw me into more of a depression. And I was actually suicidal and landed in the hospital. And at that rock bottom, I knew that I needed to change something. And so that's when I said I started getting on a hand-me-down bike and started training for triathlon instead of paying more money to my therapist. Yeah. And I'm an advocate. I'm a huge advocate for therapy. I think it's incredible. But again, I don't think you need to sit on a therapist's couch for 30 years. I think that the goal of therapy is to create change and to create awareness. And then you move on that awareness. So you take that awareness and then you act on it, because action, I think, is the number one tool for changing your state.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but you had a quote on your webpage that I totally resonated with. And it was something to that moment that you can change you have to look at it from a different perspective, and then you got to move into action. So for me, I've learned in the last couple of years, and this pandemic time has really taught me this more than ever, is that I am an action gal. So I can't sit back and just like let shit happen to me. I've got to, once I see that there's an issue, I've got to be in action or I'm in anxiety. So I get to choose which way I want to be, but sometimes the action isn't clear. And I don't know what the next step is. Like the pandemic, I mean, this really has my brain like totally beyond logic. I don't know. So I had I've had, with my 18-year-old and 20-year-old, my 18-year-old is applying to colleges. He's a competitive soccer athlete that has spent his whole life training for this moment.
Wow.
And all this athletics in college right now have been given an extra year. So there's no movement of the athletes out. So he's looking at me and he's like, there's no opportunities for me. And I'm like, nope.
What do I do? Yeah.
Yeah, we're not going to be victims here. So, and my daughter, she just wants to be in class and just like sit in a classroom and
with
listen
other
to
people.
it. Yeah. And so what I've been doing is I said this to my 20-year-old the other day. I'm like, I would tell you two things that our family will not stand for. We will not stand for letting fear run us, and we will not let relationships get ruined in this moment. So all the other stuff we can't figure out. I don't know what the hell's going on in the world right now, but I do know how I want to show up, and we have to keep reminding ourselves of that.
Yeah. Control your controllables for sure.
Yeah. So talk about like that. For me, that's like clarity. And then I got to go like, what action can I do? So give me some examples, like riding a bike is action. You're like ice bath woman too. I watch.
I know. I mean, it's a different type of action for sure. What ice baths have taught me is the action of my breath and the action of my mind. Because, I talk all about movement and I should say, move your body, move your body, move your body. And then I got pregnant. And then I had, what's it called? Placenta previa, where your placenta is covering your cervix. So I couldn't have a natural birth because otherwise I would bleed to death or the baby would die. So that's why I had to have a C-section. But most women are put on bed rest, if you have a lot of bleeding. And so I was like, well, what do you do if you can't move? But that's where ice baths were so huge for me. I didn't do them when I was pregnant, but ice baths are a different type of movement because you're sitting in a coffin of ice. And you're sitting in pain and you're sitting in major discomfort and your mind is it's moving a million miles a minute. And you can either train it and you can either listen to it because your brain is automatically is saying you're going to die. We need to get out of here because you're going to die. So it's that protection that your brain is there to protect you. That's why there's fear. That's why there's caution, because your brain is going, we're going to die. Don't do this. We're going to die. But there's your mind, and your brain, as you know very well, obviously are two completely different things, even though it's all connected. But you can tell yourself what to think and you can tell yourself what to believe, even though your brain is going, bing, 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 listen to this, like, be careful, be careful. But the movement sitting in the ice bath was me moving my thoughts around and telling myself that you're okay. You can do this. This is painful, but just sit in it, feel it, be in control of your thoughts. And that's what changed anxiety for me. I did some other things before, but anxiety was huge with the ice baths. Not only just physiologically and scientifically knowing what's actually happening to your blood and to your vagus nerve and to all those things, but with my mind, I started realizing how powerful my mind was. And it's what triathlon did with me too, because I never knew what I could do until I did something that I didn't think I could do. And then it just kind of retrains your brain out of old patterns and out of this thinking, out of this victim mentality of, oh, I can't do that, or oh, this or that or that. Yeah. Like you have to push through when there's no other choice. And that's where desperation is a great motivator too, because you have to move, otherwise you're going to die. When you're like anything in nature, if there's a bear coming at, well, actually, no, with the bear, you're supposed to.
You probably should move.
Play dead.
You should probably run if the bear's coming at you. Yeah.
I don't know. Is it play dead or is it run? I'm not sure. Well,
that's a good question. Mountain lions are what we think about here in Northern California. We don't think about bears too much. And it's you turn around and you stand up at it.
Yeah. And there's that body, like there's that composure. There's that whole thing. But yes, movement, for me, movement is life. There's the analogy of the pond or the rushing river. You know, you see a pond and it's just still, and it just grows all this mold and all this fungus, and it's just like this, you know, dirty pond because it's just sedentary. Or there's this rushing water that can slowly break through rock and is just like full of life and oxygen, and it's just incredible. So for me, I've wanted to always move.
Yeah.
And when I couldn't move, then I still was able to move my thoughts and move my brain and move things in my head when I wasn't able to move my body.
Do you think it's as linear as you're in, like you've given me a new perspective on the ice bath. Of all the biohacks, by the way, this is the one I'm like, I'm gonna go do it. Like I can do 5 days without food, no problem. But now you want me to sit a few minutes in a cold ice bath and my brain. So you're giving me a new insight to look at it from a mindset training point of view, as opposed to, oh, this is good for my parasympathetic nervous system. Like to use it as, hey, when you get into an adverse situation, because you've done these other things, you have trained your mind to be able to handle that. Do you think that it's that linear? So like when something shows up, you're like, oh, okay, wait, I have two thoughts right now. I get to choose which one I'm going to grab onto. Do you think that the mind works that quickly after a couple of ice baths, or do you think you have to have like a lot of different experiences for you personally?
Yeah, I was going to say, it's different for everybody, right? Everyone deals with things differently. For me, it took 5 years and 5 different therapists for me to know it was right to actually file for a divorce. So from separation to divorce, it took 5 years.
Yeah.
For some people, it takes 5 minutes, 5 days, 5 weeks. I don't know. I think it's different for everybody because everyone has a different environmental conditioning. Everyone has a different childhood. You know, everyone has different voices and different experiences. And I don't think anything's linear at all. And that's why it's hard to be in a social position like you are, or like I am, anyone with an audience. It's hard because it's like I share my own experience, but that's not going to be the same experience for anybody or for everybody. And some people they'll have results in their first time. They'll have incredible results. Other people, it will take consistency and consecutive action for 3 months to break through old habits or to break through just incredible hardship that they've had to endure. For me, you know, it's funny because you can see my progression in the ice baths. I have 3 highlights of over 100 videos each. So I have over 300 videos where you can literally see the progression physically and mentally. So my first ice bath was literally, I was in and I was out and I was like, I can't breathe. That was so cold. Oh my God, I'm gonna die. That was so cold. And then it literally goes to 9 minutes of me talking. I take the phone in with me and I'm talking to the phone and I go in and I control my breath and then I talk for 9 minutes while I'm in sub-zero temperatures. So it just goes to show like the progression and that took me probably about a year. I think that was from like July to July.
How often do you do ice baths?
I don't do anything consistently. Yeah. There's seasons, as any mother knows with small children. It's like people ask me, what is your daily routine? I'm like, I wake up and the rest is I have no idea what's going to happen.
And at the end of the day, the kids are alive and I'm alive. And that was a good day then. Yeah.
Yes. And if they're alive, then that's incredible. No, I have, I joke, my life isn't that chaotic. I do try and have a little bit of a routine. But there's some things that are non-negotiable. And then there's other things that are seasons of, I do an ice bath. And if I'm doing, something with a group of people, which I love, which is what you do with fasting as well, I love joining groups and having accountability and having motivation and having structure, and just having fellowship, because I think it's so much easier to know that you're not alone.
Yeah.
So I've done seasons of ice baths. And then I've done seasons of red light therapy. I've done seasons of movement, of like going for a walk every day, or running, or working out, like doing crazy HIIT training. Like there's seasons. And I think that I intuitively do things like that so that I don't plateau and so that I don't get bored. Yeah. And it's also just, I think, especially with 2020, like you're always going through seasons where everything in life is a circle, whether it's a 24-hour day, morning to night, that's a circle. And then a week, Monday to Monday, is another circle. And then a month, like everything in this life is seasonal, and it's all about being in a circle. So I think if you're trying to do one thing just like this, it's really hard to sustain. It's hard to sustain energetically. And also you're just not the same person as you were back here, and you're still trying to grow. But like, I think when you come back to something like this, you realize, wow, look how far I've come. And then you might go through another season of just like, oh, it's shifting and changing, and then becoming more. And maybe ice baths aren't. Oh, actually something interesting about the ice baths is just a few months ago, my husband and I went through something where there was a lot of grieving and a lot of pain. And a lot of crying. I cried for days, just straight, just kind of processing and dealing with this grief. And I thought, oh, you know what? One morning I was like, I'm going to do an ice bath. I just need like a refresh. I'm going to do an ice bath. And I got into the ice bath, and literally it was almost like the first time that I had done it. My body, I couldn't catch my breath. I couldn't control my breath. And this wasn't because I'm not seasoned at it, or that I hadn't done it in a few months. Like I just did it a few weeks ago. But I got out, and for the entire rest of the day, I was shaking. I couldn't get my body to regulate itself again. And it was so awesome just seeing how my body is so intelligent that it was like, no, you're going through stress right now. You're going through this grieving period. And we're already fighting so much to keep your immune system up, that the ice bath was the wrong choice.
Interesting.
So if you keep something linear like that, thinking, well, it worked 2 weeks ago, it should work today.
We see that in fasting all the time. People are like, I want to do a 5-day water fast, but 3 days in, I was going to pass out. It's like, okay, so listen to your body. And especially women, I think that we've lost touch of our own intuitive sense of what's right for our health because of looking at the way people look in magazines or comparing ourselves to everybody around us. And so then we come to some really cool things like ice baths and fasting, and we do it in a community, and now you compare yourself to everybody in the community, or you compare yourself to your husband, or it's like, no. The whole purpose is to get in touch with the intelligence so you can find that right path for you. And I don't know if you find this on social media, but when I did my very first YouTube video, and we have like over 500 videos now, that we got like 227,000 subscribers, like really cool people over there. But the first video was done because I was fed up. And what happened, it was here in California, SB 277 got passed, which was the vaccine law. And I had spent so many hours researching vaccines and being very mindful of the chemicals that went into my children. And I was sitting one day at a ladies' night out with a bunch of my friends, and we were discussing the SB 277. And one of my friends had an older son that was vaccine injured. And so she didn't vaccinate the second child. And so she turns to me and she's like, we're whispering at the table. Like, she's like, what are you going to do? Like, how are you going to do this? And our other friend overhears, the other women overhear it. And one of them looks at me and goes, your kids aren't vaccinated? Are you an idiot? And I'm like, actually, no. I've spent hours and hours and hours researching this. I'm a very educated, thoughtful parent. And the other gal looks at me and says, well, if my doctor says that I need to do it, then I'm going to do it. And so when SB 277 passed, I decided my job was to wake people up and to teach them how to think for themselves. So I just picked up the camera and was like, your body is a fucking miracle. You are built with so many incredible mechanisms. Stop doing what everybody else is doing and think for yourself. And it just launched this whole movement of people that gave them freedom to find that right path.
Yeah.
And I think we are so desperately missing that right now.
Hugely. I think we're in a perfect storm situation because the powers that be, and I don't know what I can say and what I can't.
Yeah, say whatever. We'll edit out the rest, but I can actually say more here than I can say on YouTube. I got to be really careful.
Oh, for sure. On
YouTube.
On Instagram, I can't say anything. I'm completely shadow banned on Instagram. But I think we're in a perfect situation for the powers that be, because everything that's brought us to this point has caused us to be depleted, exhausted, mentally, physically, everything. Like, look at every mother right now in 2020, and who after a full day of trying to do the business that you were doing, plus raising your kids, plus trying to figure out how to are you still there?
That's okay. We just lost your video for a moment.
Okay. Plus adding in orthorexia and adding in what you're feeding your kids and what you're trying to feed them and not feed them. And everyone's talking about the immune system but what do you do and what do you not do? Like, they're exhausted to the point where at night you lay your head to your pillow and you cannot even digest normal information, never mind digging any deeper into any type of medical journal or what's true and what's not. I mean, you can't even know what's true and what's not. And I think I love that we share the same thing about innate, incredible, intrinsic, our bodies are so wise and we're created so incredibly that if you would just stop to listen and not be desensitized and not be hurried and know that maybe what's right for you isn't for somebody else, but it's okay to choose what's right for you. Like, for me, my again, I'm not a doctor. I don't have initials after my name. No one should trust me other than I'm an expert in my own body. I'm an expert in my own experience.
Yes.
So when I have a product that works for my cold sore, for example, it's not because I read a medical journal on it or did any type. I mean, I researched what works and what doesn't. And for me, it's this ozone oil that my husband is advanced certified in ozone therapy. So thankfully he kind of did the research for me.
Awesome.
But he does the research and I'm always like we'll see. So I use it. And then when I share from my expert experience of what has worked for me, not because 100 case study did this, which do we really know that happened? What are they leaving out, or what have they added in or whatever? So it's coming back to, which is very difficult because we're just completely bombarded with everything from every single corner. What I love about technology is you and I being able to connect and being able to connect with hundreds of thousands of people in your audience, which is just, I mean, I didn't have to fly anywhere, we didn't have to all go into this major stadium. We can do it right here, which is an incredible, incredible benefit. And there's also the flip side of, in this little device, there's millions of opinions and millions of scientific data and millions of different things that are just like,
overwhelming.
Completely overwhelming and can shut you down.
Do you get people then that say to you, hey, I tried the ozone lotion and it didn't work for me? Do you get that on your Instagram where they're like, hey, you told me to try that, but this isn't working for me?
I haven't with the ozone yet, because
This is
the
that good.
I know. Ozone is just ozone.
Everybody,
it's incredible. But yeah, for sure. When I talk about beauty products, or when I talk about, I mean, what else do I talk about? Certain supplements, you know, or certain things. And that's why I'm a huge advocate, just like you are, for doing things in your season, especially with fasting. You know, I get asked that all the time. Do I intermittent fast? Do I water fast? Do I do the Prolon system? Like, what do I do? And I share some things that I do, but I certainly say, you know, if I do a certain type of fast, I'm like, if you want to join me, and if we're on the same cycle,
yeah, awesome,
then join me, because I am starting on this day because it's the first day of my period.
Well done.
And I don't want to fast before, when my body's actually thinking that it's revving up for protection and revving up to want to, you know, create this baby. Yeah. And then when I haven't created the baby, then my body's like, oh, okay, perfect. Let's cleanse, right. Let's purge. Let's do this. Let's kind of start on a new circular season.
Yeah.
So,
I love it. I think though I mean, just on healthcare alone, but probably our society in general, we're just people. And I see this like in my community, people just like, just tell me the answer. I just want to know the answer. So like it's like, there's a virus, just mask up and just stay masked until we tell you to vaccinate. And it's like, no, wait, that's how we create more suffering. And I feel like, and I'm not saying that those things are bad, if for those that are listening, I'm saying that we have to get back to thinking for ourselves, which is really what I love a lot about your Instagram. You are incredibly authentic and messy in all different ways, which allows everybody else to be messy and to find their own path. If we show up and say, this is what you do, this is how you do it, look at me, I'm perfect, humanity loses in that moment, don't you think?
Completely. Oh, humanity loses and I lose. I mean, anytime that I can get at all high on myself on a physical level, I get a cold sore the next day.
Oh, that's funny. At least you got the ozone cream.
I know. It goes away in a few days. No, but I was lucky enough to have very realistic parents, and I was never surrounded with yes people. I was always surrounded with an incredible group of friends that challenged me in a really good way, and that we didn't always have the same opinions. And yeah, there was a lot of things that kept me humble. And I think humility, I think there's a fine line between humility and victimhood, you know, because there's a lot of years where I thought, oh, I'm just being humble. But really, I was just being a victim and didn't want to step into my power and didn't want to take responsibility.
Yeah.
So there's kind of that fine line, but I think there's nothing more incredible than an authentic person with confidence that also has humility and that has empathy because they've been through something. Yes. And that makes an authentic, whether it's a leader or whether it's just a friend, I think it makes an authentic human being, of knowing that nothing's perfect. If something comes out of my mouth, I want it to be something from experience, and it could change. And hopefully, you know, some things don't change. But I hope some things do change of opinions or wisdom, because again, when you know better, you do better. I vaccinated my 18-year-old because I didn't know better. I had no idea.
Right.
And you know,
but again, so this is my thing on that topic. And I wish we were talking about this on a like a bigger scale right now in this pandemic, as I feel like people should, if a doctor, when you had a child, said, here's what I think you should do for your child with vaccines. Here are the risks. Here's the benefits. Now you need to decide for yourself. We would be living in a totally different world, but that's not the way it works. Is that we have so much fear put into us around how we show up, whether it's healthcare or right now, like how we think, like all of it. I keep telling my husband, I'm like, I have to protect my mind. Like I gotta be really careful what I let in there, because you could go down rabbit holes of conspiracy theory. You could I feel like now more than ever, I'm trying to keep my own thoughts very clear.
Yeah, no, I think now more than ever, it's very important. To go back to if every doctor, gave you the opportunities of their knowledge and allowing you to make your own decision. The first time that I actually had like this bizarre epiphany about that was when my mom went in for chemotherapy. And my dad went through radiation and chemotherapy for leukemia, and he had a bone marrow transplant. This was 30 whatever years ago. And then now my mom, when she was diagnosed with colon cancer, she was kind of going through the same things, because it's just what cancer, right. Like it's C equals C, cancer equals chemotherapy. And so she kind of, was asking the doctors about chemotherapy, asking about all this stuff. And she kind of knew that she wanted some alternative method rather than losing the hair. And she was a nurse. So she also knew that, like, what this does is it completely lowers your immune system. My dad didn't die of cancer. He died of pneumonia because he had caught a cold while he was in remission.
Yep.
And, they back then, they weren't worried about building up his immune system whatsoever. So my mom was kind of like, okay, well, I'm going to go to these doctors and I'm going to ask, every single doctor said chemotherapy, boom, boom, boom. That was the first thing. And after her 5th doctor that she went to, she flew to the States, because I'm Canadian. She was in Canada. She flew to the States, and she was in tears, begged this doctor to be truthful with her and say, is there another option? And he literally went like this on the desk, almost did like one of these. And he goes, so if I don't tell you to do chemotherapy, or if I don't encourage you to do chemotherapy, my license will be revoked.
Wow.
And that, for the first time, I was like, wait a second.
Wow.
What do you mean? And it threw me, it took me to go down that rabbit hole where instantly I was like, oh, wait. So, people are now, in this day and age, people are coming down hard on influencers, right? Where they're like, how dare you promote this, or how do I know I can trust you? You're just being paid to say this. And I want to be like, Kermit the Frog, like with the thing. I'm like, but you'll do anything your doctor says?
Right.
You don't think they're getting paid for everything that they're promoting?
Yep. Yep.
And not to throw doctors under the bus, they have an incredible amount of knowledge, but there's an incredible amount of knowledge that is at our fingertips.
Yep.
With everything. That we don't have to go to a library and, go down and try and find this book and that book.
Yep.
Everything is available to us.
Yeah.
There's stuff that's censored for sure, but we have a wealth of information that we can come to our doctors with and say, okay, so I know that you prefer this method, but what do you think about this? And if they're like, nope, then maybe find another doctor.
I was just going to say, find another doctor. Yeah, we
my
really
mom eventually found a doctor.
She did.
That helped her with what she was going through. Unfortunately, it was too late, and she detoxified. She detoxed too heavily, too quickly, and she eventually died of kidney failure.
Wow.
But yeah, it's always the if, but she wasn't in the right season to do what we would have wanted her to do. But if she would have, who knows, it could have been a lot different. But
wow. So you have a 2-year-old and a 3-year-old, is that what you said?
Yeah.
Okay. So how do you train, because that's a fresh brain. That's a clean palate.
Theirs, not mine, theirs.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, I thought about this a lot as I was parenting, is like just really being conscious to get them to think for themselves. Yeah. So, I think just from what I know about neuroplasticity and our brains, the older we get, the harder it is to think for ourselves, the more ingrained. But if you're a parent that has young children, give us some examples. Like, just from Instagram, do you live in the woods? Like, you live like in a little house? Tell me about what you're doing, because that's already out of the box, and those kids are already learning that you don't need to live in a big mansion with a big fancy car to be happy.
Yeah, it's funny because, I went through this with my older son because we moved to Los Angeles when he was 6 months old. We lived in New York, had him in New York, and then we moved to LA. And New York, wealth is seen differently in New York than it is in LA.
Oh,
in New York,
interesting.
You can be a millionaire, but you're still living in a closet.
Oh yeah, because it's New York.
You're still living in like a tiny little apartment. And then you come to LA and you're a millionaire and you have a millionaire's house,
Yeah.
typically, right?
You actually start with a millionaire car because everybody in LA drives. So the car is more important than the house, and then you get the house.
It's funny because that's the first thing we got before we bought our house. So we moved to LA, we rented so that we could kind of suss out the situation, but we did buy a BMW.
Yep. I always use that
bought
example.
A 5 Series.
Yep. I used to say people are paying more for their car payments than their apartment, because in LA, that's what matters.
Yeah, because before quarantine, everyone was driving around in their cars all day long.
Yeah, that's right.
So I raised my older son quite differently than I did my younger children. So we, moved into the typical Hollywood, West Hollywood, $2 million home, and we had all of the friends, all the celebrities. And so my son's friends were all celebrity friends, and, everyone had the big stuff. And then I got divorced and couldn't afford. I was the one that moved out because I was the one that chose to leave and moved out into an apartment that I had never paid my own phone bill. I had never paid for anything on my own. I was very, very young, and just allowed my husband to steer the ship, and I wasn't worried about paying bills or anything like that. Anyway, it's a longer story. But over a decade, I went from being very wealthy to not being able to afford gas in my car.
Wow.
And I painted my friend's baseboards so that she would have a reason. She was giving me cash under the table anyway. She's an incredible friend. But just so her husband could validate her slipping me cash.
Funny.
I painted their baseboards. I literally went to Home Depot, bought baseboards, installed baseboards, painted them, and she gave me cash for gas for my car. And then that was kind of around the whole time where I was starting to train. And then with my training, I was able to mentally get back on my feet and able to work again and start making my own money. Which eventually went into building another business. But in all of that, and then also with losing all of my material possessions, it was around the same time that California was going through crazy fires. This would have been 10 years ago, where I couldn't afford my storage unit anymore. So I went in there, and in my ear on the radio, people were losing their homes. They were being evacuated, losing everything. And it was one of those moments for me too, where I was like, there's a brain switch here. Instead of being a victim of, I can't afford this anymore, there's always the comparing up and the comparing down, right?
Yep.
So I was able to make a choice to actually give all of this stuff to Goodwill, because I had to downsize. And it went from downsizing to downsizing to downsizing. And it all came in layers. So now we're choosing to raise our family in a very, very small footprint. We're in a guest house that doesn't even have its own address, in a one-room home. So we took out both little bookshelves, and both kids sleep on either side of the couch in like little teepees. And then our bed is here, and our little kitchen is here, and our bathroom. And we have like an indoor-outdoor living situation. But because we spend a lot less money on our living expenses, we have a lot more space outside, and we spend a lot of time outside because we're not spending time having to make more money to pay for more stuff.
Yep.
And I think it helped too when my mom died, because instantly everything that meant something to her on the Friday, on the Saturday after she passed away, we got rid of.
Oh,
wow. We had 3 different bags: a Goodwill bag, a friend bag, and a garbage bag, 3 different colors, because she was in Canada and I was up there to help my sister because she was living in my sister's basement, or in her condo. And so I was only there for 2 weeks, and I wanted to help my sister. She was pregnant with her 4th. So we really just it wasn't one of those where you just leave everything for a couple months.
I was going to say that is not what most people hang on to it because they can't let it go.
Yeah, it was, again, a choice of desperation, which I'm really grateful for now, because I didn't want to have my sister deal with that alone in the next couple of months. And I knew that she was having her 4th baby. So we were there for 2 weeks, And within those 2 weeks, we literally separated everything into those 3 piles, one to give to her friends, another one to give to Goodwill, and the other one was trash.
Wow.
And it was very, very freeing.
I was just going to say.
Yeah.
I bet.
I mean, I've never felt more free than I do now because I've gone through so many experiences of letting go, some out of desperation and some out of choice.
Yeah.
And
back to the training. You either decide to train yourself in an ice bath, or you let life train you, or you do both, and you find yourself.
And training yourself is a lot easier because then you can withstand what life throws at you because you already have the training. You've gone through the marathon training to know that you can do those 26.2 miles.
Yeah. And I hope that we look back at 2020 and we say that. I mean, in so many
some
ways.
Some of us will, some of us won't.
In so many ways, this year pushed me to do things that are so much better for my life than they were before, even though they were painful in the moment. So I hope as a society, we go back and we look at some of those things.
I mean, I think there's incredible moments. Think of all the people that sold their homes and are living in an RV.
Yeah.
And are like living this incredible adventurous life. I mean, 5 of my closest friends moved from LA this year.
Wow. Where'd they go?
2 went to Australia, went to New Zealand.
Wow.
Another one went to Georgia, and another one is back and forth in Aspen. But I think it's brought about change where people are really thinking what is worth it right now. And it's like, what is happiness and what is health? And that looks different for everybody. Yeah. But I think people are now finally kind of forced to take a side.
Yeah.
Which we all know there's never been more division in this country.
For sure.
But it's not all bad. I think it's really good if you can be confident in your choice through knowledge and through kind of gaining that wisdom and gaining that understanding of why you're making your choice.
Yeah. And figuring out what's right for you, which is, I think, the most important thing, because, you could live your whole life and all of a sudden you're 60 and realize you lived somebody else's life. And
that was me at 30.
Yeah. At this moment, we get to make a decision on how we want to do this. I mean, I can just tell you here in Silicon Valley, I have so many patients that are like, I'm not going back, like big high tech, like Facebook, Google, and they're like, we're not going back till next year. And so then all of a sudden their whole day has been reorganized. They can come into our office whenever they want, and they are happier human beings because they're not going to the office and getting stuck there till 9 o'clock at night. Yeah,
and what you thought was normal, what you think of New York. Think of New Yorkers who thought it was normal to go into their tiny little cubicles and go into their tiny little things day in and day out. And it takes something this global and this monstrous to actually shake us up and be like, wait, that doesn't have to be normal.
Right.
I don't have to be in this rat race. Like, I can choose to take a break, because if I don't, something will choose to break me and I don't have the training for it.
Right.
That's why I always say, like with fasting or with nutritional choices or with ice baths or movement or whatever, even if you feel great, if you don't implement those actions when you're feeling healthy, you're certainly not going to have the energy to implement those when you're feeling like shit. So when you all of a sudden are diagnosed with cancer or you're diagnosed with whatever, your energy is already like completely displaced. So you're now worried about your family and you're worried about this and you're trying to get doctor's appointments here and there. You're typically not going to do your first coffee enema when you come back from your doctor's appointment that just told you you have colon cancer. If you've never done it before, Right. But if you've done coffee enemas and you've gotten over the fear and you've seen the results, and the results speak louder than the fear, and all of a sudden you're excited and you see how vibrant you are and how amazing you feel and how your skin has cleared up and your immune system is on point. Then if you get diagnosed with cancer, then you're like, boom, I know what to do. I've done this. I'm going to fast. I'm going to do my coffee enemas. I'm going to do this, this, and this. And it's not as hard because you've seen the benefits and you've seen the results and you've already practiced it. So it's not this like huge, overwhelming thing that you have to start something new.
I love that. I walked the journey of cancer with a good friend. And I watched how much money she spent trying to repair her health. And I
It's
mean, the
devastating.
pain and everything she went through. And when a couple days before she died, she was in hospice care, and her liver, it was breast cancer that had metastasized to the liver. And the liver was just, I mean, she was skin and bones, and you could see this ginormous tumor-filled liver. And I
That
remember
was my
something
mom, yeah.
clicking in my brain and thinking, okay, so we get to decide, do we wait until we get the diagnosis to try to do something? Or do I do everything that she did to try to undo her cancer? What if I did that now, so I never have to be in this position again?
Yep.
Forever.
Yeah. And even if you are, for some reason, even if you are, then you have the tools, and you've built a house before, you know how to build a house. And if a hurricane comes in and demolishes that house, you know, because you've built homes before, you know how to build a house, and you know where to start, and you have all the tools, and you can rebuild your house.
Yeah, I love it. I love it.
But it does take practice.
I have a couple other questions for you, but before I do that, you have to tell me your favorite biohack. So, like, your husband does he own a biohacking center or an office, or what does he do?
Yeah, I know. He's like the biggest, what do you call it? Like, not anomaly, but what's when someone's like super private and super,
so he doesn't, oh gosh, yes, that's how my husband is too. Yeah. So he doesn't, he wouldn't want it.
And I'm just like, oh, let me tell you about my sexual past, And
oh my gosh.
Ireland's just like, wow, really? No, but he's fine. He's on my Instagram. No, he doesn't own an office, but he does everything from hands-on. He used to do a lot more hands-on, obviously. And then now he does phone consultations and works with people privately. But I just swallowed a hair. Hold on.
It's all good. Extra minerals in there. It'll be good for you.
I know, right? Let me just put some collagen in there.
Yeah.
So he was a model also for 20 years, but before that he did prerequisites for chiropractic. So he's always had an interest in how the body works and the mind-body connection. And on a personal level, his mom suffered for years and years with back pain and did a bunch of different surgeries. And he watched his mom for a lot of his years growing up in bed and in pain and in the hospital in traction and stuff. So he, from a heartfelt level, has always wanted to help people. And I don't want to call him a healer because that sounds really woo-woo, but he really is, because he goes to the root of why someone's having symptoms, and then he deals with those symptoms. So he works on the body, but as you know, with that, he also deals with the mind and everything from nutrition all the way to scar tissue and, to everything. So I have all of the biohacking tools that I have because we've invested in it for his work. So I don't know if we would have invested in it before, but he's able to use it for work. So almost like, it feels like it's okay to spend that amount of money, because I wouldn't have spent the amount on myself, which is so funny because, like we were saying, but all of a sudden you get diagnosed with something and money just flows out the window.
Right. And you find it, the money you didn't know you have all of a sudden. So what's your favorite tool that you guys have?
I hate to say it, but it's seasonal. It's completely,
that's great.
It's completely seasonal, because if we had to leave, so if we were evacuated, or if, something happened where we had to leave and we had to choose one of our biohacking tools, it would probably be our ozone units.
Okay. Awesome.
I think the number one thing would be our ozone units. Now, don't quote this is me saying, I think ozone would be number one. And then number two would be our PEMF unit.
Yeah, we have one of those. Yeah. That thing is amazing.
It's basically, it's the most upstream in our opinion. It's the most upstream that you can get when you heal Dr. Pompa's whole thing. When you heal the cell, you get well, or heal the cell to get well.
Heal the cell to get well. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think the most upstream tools would be the PEMF and the ozone.
I do the PMF. What I've been doing through this craziness is I'll pop on it at 7.8 is the frequency of the earth.
Mm-hmm.
And when I'm feeling unearthed or like I'm getting stuck in the energy of the world, I just pop myself on that thing, and it's like somebody tranquilizes you. It within minutes. You are so relaxed. It's crazy.
It's completely grounding, and it's incredible what you can feel on that cellular level, because so many things are invisible, like Wi-Fi is invisible. All of these inhibitors to our immune system and to our brain that's causing brain fog and all that stuff, you can't see it. So it's, if a car is coming at you, you feel like, oh no, I mean, there's going to be an accident. We don't see all of these invisible things now. We don't see the glyphosate. We don't see all of these things. And so, even with a PEMF, it's something that you really you can't see it, but you can feel it. And then right away you can feel what you weren't doing before. And you can feel that this is actually working.
Yes, it does have that immediate one. Okay, and then I have 5 questions for you, but before I do that, I have to ask you, because what you think of your Joy Lux. I saw that you talk about the Joy Lux, and a large piece of my audience is menopausal women. And when I heard about the Joy Lux, I'm like, this is a gift to all women. Yes.
For real. It's so funny. I just did a live the other day. So that's why it's just here on
it's amazing.
On my bedside. And again, I was saying on the other live too, I need to actually, before I talk about it, I need to like dive into the actual research of it, because the company's probably like, you should maybe read a little bit more about it. But I just know experientially wise that it's incredible. So I don't know what your audience knows or
well, so I can tell you what all the menopausal women use it for is that there's so much dryness that happens as you move through menopause. Sex becomes difficult and you lose the tightness of the inner vaginal area. So when I learned about it, we use red light therapy in here, and I was like, red light therapy for inside the vagina?
On the inside?
That's brilliant.
Yeah. No, I thought the same thing. So I instantly thought red light, because I have a lot of toys. I love toys and tools.
Yeah.
But this is the first one that I saw that was a medical grade device that was like FDA approved and all this stuff. But I was like, but I don't even care about that, because a lot of stuff that I do isn't FDA approved, as you know.
Yep.
But red light was the first thing that I was like, red light on the inside? That completely makes sense. It's like ozone insufflations. They make sense to me, or coffee enema, like anything that you do on the inside is amazing. But then also with the vibration, with the timing of it. And what I didn't know, because I haven't read, but I didn't see or read or hear anything, that there's one thing on here, whatever you call it, not tone, but there's one, I think there's 12 different vibrations.
Yeah.
And one of them I found that when I clench, when I do a Kegel, this responds. So it responds with a bigger vibration.
Yeah.
And then I let go and it kind of goes back to the normal vibration.
Oh, I didn't know that.
And then I clench and it vibrates harder.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that.
So I got to go back and look at that. So like bladder control and and is a big thing for women, just because they can't. And what I learned about it from Susan Bratton, who was talking about how a lot of times women are not getting pleasure during sex because they can't grab the way they used to grab. And any woman that's had a baby will tell you, life is different down there after a head comes flying through. So
head comes flying through, but also just your pelvic floor. So when you think of just your anatomy, your pelvic floor is that sling, that beautiful little sling that holds up all of this stuff. So when you're pregnant and you gain however many pounds, it doesn't matter if it's 20 pounds or if it's 100 pounds, all of that weakens your pelvic floor. So if you're not doing pelvic floor exercises when you're pregnant, which is just such a pet peeve of mine too, if you go back to like us just giving up all of our common sense and just saying, there was no doctor that ever told me to exercise when I was pregnant.
Right.
It literally was the opposite of well, you should probably just take it easy and don't do this and don't do that and make sure you eat enough. And it wasn't like, yes, you are in for a marathon now, so you better start training.
Yep.
Like this is, you find out you're pregnant and it's day one of training.
Yeah.
That's how I was with my last pregnancy, thankfully.
Amazing.
But pelvic floor is like, that it's a must. We should have education for every single woman that gets pregnant, even before you get pregnant, to strengthen that area, because it's not only for feel good, for, you know, having orgasms, but as we know, what an orgasm does for your entire body and our sexual health is like the epicenter of health for everything.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's bizarrely not talked about enough.
That's why when I was preparing for this, Jessica's like, yeah, she just went on and talked about Joylux on her Instagram. I'm like, oh my God. And she goes, she actually showed the thing. I was like, that's amazing. So I love it. And I decided actually and now you got me thinking, maybe I'll do it for people's 40th birthday. Every 50-year-old woman in my life is getting that as a present when she turns 50. I have a friend who just turned 60. I gave her one. It's like, and every woman's like, what?
It's an incredible gift. It is, you know, I say it is expensive. It's $500. But expensive is relative to, you know, some women will have no problem dropping $500 on a pair of stilettos, you know, but I will spend $500 on a medical grade device that I don't have to go and do what my mom did, which was bladder surgery, and then another surgery and another surgery. And then she ended up having piles, and where basically her anus fell out, or like her bum fell out because she was doing a squat or whatever. Like, just again, with no education, right? I would much rather spend money on this than another area of my life, because this is upstream. Okay, so the ozone, the PEMF, and my Joylux.
I know.
That's my purse.
That's what I thought. I thought the Joylux would be in there. So yeah,
it's awesome. In there. Yeah, that's an easy one. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, last 5 questions. So these are like rapid fire questions that we have specific for you. If you could go back and talk to your 30-year-old self, what advice would you give her?
30. It's so hard. That question is so hard, because I would say something to myself, but it wouldn't land, because I hadn't been through what I went through to get to where I am here. Mm-hmm. So I don't mean for that to be a cop-out.
No, I think that's well said.
But I think
she needed to hear at that time.
She needed to know. I wish I would have had the tools of knowing that I have a choice of choosing happiness, and that I didn't have to choose to be sad to feel validation, because my whole life I had chosen sadness as an identity. And I don't know if it's because my dad died when I was 11. So it was kind of that like prepubescent whole thing of like, you know, I'm sure Dr. Freud has some study that he did on that, you know, but something happened there where my dad was taken away and I was this 11-year-old little girl. And then, you know, every relationship after that was imprinted with the fatherless little girl, you know? So, I chose an identity of sadness because that's what got me attention as a little girl.
Yep.
And it's so interesting when I look back, because I had huge physical issues that were caused from my depression. So back pain, insane menstrual cramps. I would be out of school for 3 or 4 days out of the month because I had such bad menstrual cramps. And all of those things now, knowing that I have tools to actually not have cramps anymore, which is, you know, a different topic.
Maybe you needed to put her in an ice bath.
See, but the thing is you could have thrown me in an ice bath at my 30th, and I would have had no tools to know what to do with it. So it really, I wish I would have known about the choice of happiness, the choice of thoughts. I wish I didn't believe that my thoughts and my emotions ruled me, because I thought my emotions were just my emotions and you can't control them. And so my emotions controlled me and my thoughts controlled me, where a decade later, I now know that that's false, that I can control my emotions and I can control my thoughts.
Yeah. I think a lot of people don't even ever learn that. So it's
No. Yeah.
wonderful. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, one of the things I love about the way you show up on Instagram, and I think the fact that you were a model is even more powerful, because you show up so authentically and you give the rest of the world, and especially young girls, the permission to be authentic. So what would you say to girls right now who are watching social media and making the decision on how they want to act, how they want to look based off of what they're seeing on social media?
I mean, it sounds cliche because I feel like a lot of people are saying it already now, that social media is just your highlight reel, and to not compare.
Yeah.
I think the best thing that we can do for ourselves and for our kids, it's hard because, I use social media for my business. A lot of people do. But I think what we all need to get back to, kind of circling back to what you said at the beginning, is authenticity, and is the power in ourselves. So I think a big tool is to shut off social media. I haven't watched The Social Dilemma yet, but obviously I've heard all about it.
Yeah.
But I think a huge thing that is in our control, when everything in the world seems out of control, we can still control to shut this off.
Mm-hmm.
So we can use it for business, or kids can use it for school or whatever. But when there's like a heightened anxiety that comes with comparison, then it's in your control to shut it off.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's true. That's pretty powerful.
Yeah. So you can use it for business, use it for whatever you need to connect on, but then shut it off and connect to yourself and connect to another human being.
I love that. I love that. Okay. I know I was going to ask you what the 5 things are that you do every day for your health, but now that I've talked with you for the last hour and I'm going to ask one thing, because I think your answer will be like, I don't know, every day is a different day.
I do have my top things that I try and hit in a day.
What are they?
Number 1 is hydration. Hydration, I think, sets my entire day up for success. So first thing I do is Ion Biome. So I take Dr. Zach's Ion Biome because otherwise nothing will connect in my cells. So I feed that first, and then I drink water. I literally carry this around like a crazy person.
Awesome.
And I either put it out in the sun and add a little bit of sea salt to the water to structure the water, so it actually hydrates you instead of just makes you pee a million times a day. So hydration, and Ion Biome, and then supplementation. I take supplements like a crazy person daily, because I might not have time to eat what I should eat for sustenance and nutrition. So whether I'm doing greens, like my Organifi, I have a whole system of Organifi that I do morning, noon, and night. Just easy stuff that's mindful, but that's also really quick and doesn't take a lot of time, because I certainly can't do a coffee enema every day. I can't do a sauna every day. I love when I compare myself to people on social media. I'm like, how do they even have makeup on today? Like, how do you have time to do your hair? Like, I had a bunch of Zoom calls today. So I just kind of like, I do my hair and makeup, but most days there's other things that are important. I'd much rather take time to make sure I go for a walk, or make sure that I'm outside as much as I can be. So the non-negotiables are Ion Biome. And that sounds like a weird QVC like ad. It's not at all. It just, it's changed my mind.
Us too. Yeah.
Like
we talk about
thing.
It. Yep. It's a non-good. I always tell people that if there was one supplement, it's not really even a supplement you should be on. That's it. So agreed. Yeah.
So non-negotiables are Ion Biome, hydration, supplementation, movement, and laughter. Because I know I'm going to cry. That's a given. Like, that's not even a choice. I'm just going to cry. And so I need to make it a choice to laugh. And typically it's with my kids or whatever, but laughing changes things big time.
It's a great state changer. Okay. Who are the 5 people you follow on social media that you're like, oh, you got to go check these people's social media out?
Oh, that's a good one. gosh, I would almost have to like go on to.
I know, right?
To,
okay,
to
so let's think
trigger
of
it
more
for me.
like Zach Bush. I mean, like people
Yeah.
who have really impacted the way that you think and you appreciate the messages that they're sending out there. So maybe it's not even social media. Maybe it's people you've interacted with.
Well, you would be huge on that list. I think
thank
following someone that is educated and that is current, but that you also carry an empathy with you as well. So there's people that have your amount of education that literally are just like, whoop.
Yeah.
It's like that Charlie Brown teacher is like,
yes.
But I appreciate, and Dr. Zach does this as well. I appreciate someone with education that doesn't need to use the big words, even though you have it in your vocabulary, but you can talk normal and you can talk on a level of person to person that I understand and that lands with me and that actually triggers change in me. That's normal. So you would be a huge one. Dr. Zach would be another one. People, I mean, again, I hate to come back to seasons, but I've done spring cleaning on my Instagram constantly because when I was pregnant, my top 5 would have been a lot different than postpartum.
Yeah.
Or 2020, is a lot different. I follow accounts now that are educational, empathetic, mindful, and serene.
Yes.
So I can't follow too many accounts that are like A-type, workout programs and this and that, because I'm just not in that space. Like I need to do that for myself, but then I need to follow people who are like calm.
Yes.
But yeah, I would say like educational, because I think social media, the greatest tool about social media is gaining tools. Definitely. So whether it's anything from a little less toxic, Shauna is someone that I love because her tag is a little less toxic, which means do what you can in the season that you're in. So you don't have to be overwhelmed and change everything, but just change little things along the way. And then that becomes a sustainable lifestyle for you that just brings health and brings healing, along the way.
Yeah, I had to do some spring cleaning on my Instagram, especially. I took a little break from Facebook just because I just again, want to hear my own voice. But if people were arguing or they were adversarial, I was like, I just can't. I don't want to be in that vibration right now.
No, for right now, I may be in that place again later, but for right now, like you said before too, I need to protect this. I need to protect this so that I have energy enough for my children.
That's right.
And if I'm completely depleted and in every single conversation and in every single opinion, I have nothing left for my family,
So true. I love that. Okay. Last one. If you had one message for the world that you could get implanted in everybody's brain, what would that be?
It's be kind to yourself.
Love it. Yep.
I mean, I'm sure tonight I'll be laying in bed being like, darn it, I should have said this. It would have been much more powerful.
Well, when we post this on Instagram, you can put in, hey, I want to make a modification to that.
My number 5. But no, it is something that I tell my audience all the time and that I need to tell myself more. So I feel like that's a good message when I know that I don't do it for myself. But I think kindness, especially in the world right now, not only to other people, but kindness and grace for ourselves. It brings down the expectations and it brings down the animosity and it brings everything down to a place that because you can only absorb so much, and I think if you're kind to yourself, then that will become a motivation instead of being hard on yourself.
Agreed.
It was a whole part of my victimhood too, whereas like the more of a victim I was, the harder I was on myself and I didn't get anything done.
Yes.
Where when you're kind to yourself, you can really offer yourself grace. And then when you operate from that place, you can become a lot more successful and really be a better human being. And I think that that's really at the epicenter of everything.
And
right now.
Contribute to the world. I think as a parent, that was a really big, the number one value I wanted my kids to grow up with was compassion. and kindness, because the world didn't need more takers. The world needs more givers and more people who are elevating the vibration. So absolutely love that. So, well, this was a delight. I really appreciate, after a stressful Zoom talk with the teacher, to pop on here.
I'm gonna go cry right now. I'm just gonna let it all out.
So now you can go. At least you had a couple tools in your back pocket. And I'm gonna do, my son who's 18. He's agreed to do the ice bath with me, where we'll like throw it in the tub. Like you know me, as a mom, I'm like, are you gonna get in it with me? And he's like, no. Okay, well, I'll get in it first, and then you get in it. So we will send a little Instagram message to you when we decide to do an ice bath.
Fun. It's the greatest way of teaching our children is by example, you know, and getting them involved in what you're doing. So I love that. Yes, definitely send me a video of that, because it's fun.
I will. So, but keep up all the amazing work you're doing. And I know.
Thank you. You too.
Thank you. It seems like just being authentic is just how you want to show up. But I just want to emphasize that as a beautiful woman who is a model, like, you really give women permission to continue to be authentic. So thank you for doing that.
That's a great compliment. I appreciate that.
Yeah, awesome. Okay,
thank you.
You can go cry now.
I'll go cry and maybe use my Joy Locks. Benefit from something. Thank you.
Okay, Angie, have a great one.
Seeing you.
Okay, bye.